are supposed to be working now on sonnets, right? How's that going for you? This is harder than the riddle, right?
I couldn't get really supposed to read, like what sounds he was really supposed to read.
Okay, where are you? Where are the directions for it?
No, it said like Shakespeare and then certain.
Okay, it's color coded. Remember, right? So like if you look at the required texts, right? If it's from the Norton Anthology, it's in yellow. If it's from Writing Analytically, it's in red. And if it's the two drama books are also color coded, right? So everything on there is color coded. So yeah, so the sonnets are in the Norton Intro to Literature. Okay. So right, as far as the sonnets are going, so what are you having trouble with? What's difficult about this?
Just trying to tell the difference between iambic pentameter and what's the other one called?
Trochaic? Okay.
Trochaic.
Okay. So the issue.
I see the difference. Like I Google it, but
yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that particular issue, right? Okay. So when we're talking about meter, does anybody know what pentameter means in the first place? What's pentameter? 5 feet, right? So what's a foot? Is a foot the same as a syllable? No, it's different, right? So an iamb and a trochee, right, those things are feet. They're both 2-syllable feet. So an iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. A trochee is a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. So an iamb, let me think an example of a word that would be an iamb. Let's see. Why can I never think of this one called upon to? Okay, so alters, like in the Shakespeare poem. Right, you put the emphasis on the second syllable. Alters. A trochee works the opposite way, right? So, tempests, right, storms. You put the emphasis on the first syllable, the second syllable is weaker. These are the basic feet that poets use when putting together a line. So if a line is an iambic or trochaic pentameter, how many syllables is that going to be? How many syllables? 10, exactly, right? Because an iamb is 2 syllables, right? So you're going to have a 10-syllable line. Now, the reason we have different kinds of feet here, these names actually come from Greek, and they were used by Greek and Roman poets to produce different effects. So, which direction does your voice go in if you're speaking an iamb? Alters. Which direction? Does it go up or down? Goes up, right? Exactly. So we call this a meter that goes up, a rising meter. And that's often used for like a dramatic build in a line, right? It's used to suggest momentum. Now, a trochee, on the other hand, right, your voice goes in which direction? Down, yes. This is called a falling meter. Right? Falling meter is often used to slow momentum or release tension in a line. Now, most lines will actually end up being a mix of different feet that produce different effects. So your basic feet are these 2-syllable feet. The Greeks and Romans used iambs typically for comic plays, and trochees for tragedy. Right? Can we see why? Right? They relate the form that they're writing in to the genre. Right? You want something positive, something funny to make people laugh, right? You make the voice go up. You want something that's, about dragging people down, you make the voice go down. There are 3-syllable equivalents of each of these two. The iambs equivalent is an anapest, and that is 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. And the trochees equivalent is a dactyl, which is a stressed syllable followed by 2 unstressed syllables.
Equivalent to.
The dactyl is a 3-syllable equivalent of a trochee.
Oh, okay.
And an anapest is a 3-syllable equivalent of an iamb.
Okay.
Dactyls were used actually for epic. The Greeks wrote epic in dactylic hexameter. So hexameter would be how many feet? That's 6 feet. And if we're writing in dactyls, then how many syllables would that be? 18 syllable lines. Yep. Greeks wrote epic in long, slow lines. Now there are 2 other sort of special kind of feet as well. Spondee and a pyrrhic. A spondee is 2 stressed syllables in a single foot. A pyrrhic, can we guess what that would be then?
2 unstressed.
Exactly, 2 unstressed syllables in a single foot. So usually when we are trying to tease out the meter of a particular poem, we have to pay very close attention to how it sounds. Right? Sometimes we have to either speak it aloud or sound it out in our heads, right? So why don't you try on page 648 in the Norton, the first line of this Shakespeare poem, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds." Speak the line in your head. If you don't have a book with you, then share with somebody who does. It's on page 648, and just that first line, see if you can tease out the rhythm of it, right? See if you can figure out which syllables are stressed, which syllables are unstressed. Right, stress just means like where does your voice emphasize the syllable? Yeah, Matthew.
What was the page number again?
648.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called again?
Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds is the poem. It's the only full poem on page 648.
She has a, I have a different
Oh,
version.
okay, you have a different book, right?
Full size.
Yes.
What are we supposed to be doing exactly?
Just just go through the line and point out where the syllables are stressed or unstressed. Right? What syllables does your voice emphasize, and which syllables do you sort of glide over? Don't be afraid to try to sound it out. you think you've got it figured out, speak up. Well, before we worry about that, let's just try and see where the stresses are.
It seems like they're on the vowels that are seem like, well, not the vowels, but the stressed out. The part of the word that's stressed out when you say it. That's like the U. Is it?
Okay. The
I
U's.
mean, not the U, but the
think unstressed is a little U, right? And the mark is stressed.
So the mark means
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah, the mark is what you place over the stressed syllable. The like little sort of hash mark here, and then the little U's go over an unstressed syllable.
Can when I say the phrase, I think that net, not marriage and true.
Okay.
I think those are like ways.
Okay. Let, certainly, right? Let. If we say these first three words together, let me not.
I would also agree that not would probably be stressed.
Yeah, not. What about me? Let me not to the.
I feel like you would
A little
breeze
bit.
over that one.
What's that?
I feel like it almost, again, maybe I'm just sounding it wrong. I feel like you kind of breeze over me more so than you would the other two.
More so than let and not, right? But it's not an insignificant syllable here, right? So you don't stress it quite as much as let or not, but it still kind of punches a bit, like maybe more than, say, to the, right? If we say to the, these are clearly unstressed, right? Let me not.
So it's me.
Yeah, the me is also stressed, yeah. Usually one clue is that any like monosyllabic words, unless they're like prepositions or articles, are usually stressed. Not always, but usually.
I think in marriage, the first part of that would be stressed.
Marriage, yep. Marriage, true love.
I think true would be stressed.
Okay, true. True minds.
Definitely mine's a stress.
Minds is also stressed, right? So we've got here stress, 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 unstress, unstress, stress, unstress, unstress, stress, stress. So let's break this up into feet. So we start with what kind of foot? What do we call this?
Responding.
Yeah. Start with a spondy.
And you got the trochanteric
And then we got a trochee,
and your period.
pyrrhic,
You end with spine.
and another spondy. So the line is balanced at both ends, right? We're in the same place, the same kind of sound at the end of the line that we are at the beginning. And what about the middle of the line? Does the line ever build any kind of real momentum? Do we get any forward motion going? Why not? What's the effect of the trochee and the iamb and the pyrrhic all together there?
Following.
Well,
Well,
it kind of starts off slow, then it picks up with I am, and then it kind of tails off as the period.
Yeah, there's this kind of pushing and pulling here rhythmically, right? It never gets going in any particular direction. Now, meter actually does relate very strongly to meaning. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. We get to the next line. Admit impediments. So what does that mean? Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Literally, what does that mean? What's an impediment?
Something in your way.
Yeah. Throwing something in the way, right? Throwing a wrench in the works. Doing something to slow something down or stop something else, right?
Talking about interrupting a thinking process, kind of, or is it? It says the marriage of true minds.
Yeah, if we just think about the literal level here, right? First, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. What is he saying? What does that mean? Okay. Without any such inferences, maybe, right? What I mean, on the simplest level, what does this mean? Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. What is he not going to get in the way of? What is he not going to stop? Yeah, the marriage of true minds, right? You know, minds that are suited for each other. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. And yet, what does he keep throwing up in this line? He's saying, I'm not going to admit impediment to the marriage of true. I'm not going to slow down or stop the marriage of true minds. But what is he doing to the line?
Slowing it down.
Yeah, he keeps speeding up and slowing down the line, right? The line does not attain a consistent rhythm. So this suggests that maybe he's up to a little bit more than he says he is. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Love is not love. See if you can figure out the rhythm of this line. Admit impediment, love is not love. What about admit?
The latter part of the word, I think, would be stressed.
Yeah, admit is iambic, good. Imped. Yep. So that's iambic too, right? Imment. Yep, this is also iambic. Good. So we've got our first consistent set here, right, of feet. Just as he says, he is not going to admit impediment. And then what happens? Love is not love.
Stress.
You got to stress.
You got a trochee here, and not love.
Spondy.
And that's another spondy, yeah. So just as he says he's going to ease the way, right?
Kind of speeds it up the same moment.
Yeah. Well, do the stress syllables speed it up? He speeds it up and then slows it down again, right? Once he starts talking about love, he pulls it back and slows it down again, right? Love is not love. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna ease the way now. I will not admit impediment to the marriage of true minds. Oh, but now I'm gonna throw in another roadblock. Right? I'm gonna give you another wacky rhythm here that slows everything down, that stops your forward momentum. So sometimes the meter will suit the literal meaning of the lines, and sometimes, as in this case, it's a way of actively undercutting it. Right? So what he is doing is mocking with the rhythm the idea he's expressing in the language. Do you see what I'm saying?
It's kind of the word almost like a sarcastic take as far as what he's actually trying to convey.
Yeah, it's irony, right? It's literally, he's saying the opposite of what he means. And we can get at what he means by looking at the way he sets up the rhythm, right? Now there are other clues that we can look to see that not all is as it seems in this particular poem. Right, rhyme is also a really important guide to which ideas we're supposed to connect with each other. So there are a couple basic types of rhyme. Right. Most basic type masculine and feminine rhymes. A masculine rhyme rhymes single stressed syllables. And that usually produces a kind of forceful closed effect, right? It's like, okay, this closes off the thought. So say minds and finds, if we look at this particular poem, right? That's a masculine rhyme. A feminine rhyme rhymes essentially two trochees with each other. So an example from this poem would be like taken and shaken, right? It ends on an unstressed syllable, but both syllables rhyme. And a feminine rhyme tends to leave the line open or unresolved. Yeah, sure. So if we look a little bit further down in this particular poem, we got, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. So minds and finds are masculine rhymes. And usually, when a line ends on a stressed syllable anyway, right, that kind of halts the rhythm. And ending these rhymes on stressed syllables usually indicates sort of strength or force of a particular idea. Oh no is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Taken and shaken, right, are the feminine rhymes here. And a feminine rhyme is often an indicator, right? Ending on an unstressed syllable, right? It sort of leaves the line open. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the masculine rhyme is the rhyme between two words that are stressed, right?
Yeah, single syllables that are stressed. Yep.
The feminine rhymes are the ones, the words that rhyme that are unstressed.
Not quite. It has to be essentially, right, a trochee rhyming, right? You rhyme two trochees to each other. So taken and shaken.
So the author, does he leave that open for interpretation to the reader, or is that an opportunity to elaborate more by him, or the author, whoever that may be?
Yes, all of those things, actually.
Okay.
What it does, it leaves the line free to sort of, it doesn't end the line on a forceful note. And so the thought can then continue over into the next line. Right? There's another way of doing this as well that doesn't involve rhyme, called enjambment. And we see an example of this right here. Right? In both of these lines. What happens at the end of each of these lines? Does either of these first two lines indicate a completed thought? Right, yeah, they end with these strong stresses, but the thought still carries over into the next line, right? So when you see a line that is not a complete sentence, that doesn't have any sort of end punctuation, but the sentence then continues over into the next line, that's called enjambment. And that often indicates less a thought left open and more a thought sort of broken. Now, what might be the significance of broken lines in a poem that purports to be about marriage? What's a marriage supposed to be? Yeah, it's supposed to be a union of two people, right? You know, two people united as one. Yay. Everybody gets cake. But if we're breaking the lines, right, how strong a union is this?
Not particularly.
Yeah, it indicates that maybe this is a little bit shaky, right? Maybe this isn't quite so strong. Now, I want to direct you briefly to the last two lines of the poem as well. Proved and loved. Do these words actually rhyme with each other?
Yes.
Why would you say yeah? In what way do they rhyme with each
Not
other?
phonetically, but grammatically they do.
Grammatically, yeah, they look like they're supposed to rhyme, right? They look like they should rhyme. But if you actually sound them out, the vowel sound is different, right? This is what's called an I rhyme. I rhymes are words that look like they ought to rhyme but don't. And an I rhyme usually indicates a little bit of sleight of hand on the part of the poet, right? It indicates that he's being tricky, that he's not saying to you what he actually means. I'll give you an example using actually the same words. There's a poem by Christopher Marlowe called "The Passionate Shepherd to His Love." And we'll just wake this up and ignore the mold as always. Like the screensaver on this computer is really a little bit overzealous. 230. Okay. So. This is a very well-known poem by an early contemporary of Shakespeare. So it's a Shakespeare and Marlowe writing at about the same time. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove, that hills and valleys, dale and field, and all the craggy mountains yield. There will we sit upon the rocks and see the shepherds feed their flocks, by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals. There will I make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle, embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. Thy silver dishes for thy meat are precious as the gods do eat, shall on an ivory table be, prepared each day for thee and me. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing, for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. Okay, so the speaker is who? The person who is making this speech. What's he supposed to be? He's supposed to be a shepherd, right? A simple herder of sheep. Out in the country with his dog and his stick, making sure that the sheep do not stray, right? And what is his rhetorical purpose here? What is he trying to do? Yeah, he's trying to convince his love to come out to the country with him, right? And what sort of picture is he painting of country life? What sorts of things will she have if she comes with him? Yeah, I mean, yeah, silver dishes, right? Gold belt, gold buckles on her slippers, right? The birds will sing madrigals to her, right? This all sounds pretty damn good, yeah? Now, is this what she would actually get if she moved out to the country with a shepherd? Hell no, right? She'd, get smells and mud and sheep shit. So, if we look at the very first two lines of the poem, right, come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove, he's tipping his hand from the beginning there, right? Hey, this is not 100% sincere. Right? This belongs to a genre of poetry called pastoral. And pastoral poems are essentially poems written by sophisticated, educated urban court poets pretending to be simple shepherds, right? In celebration of a simple life that they wouldn't know if it walked up and bit them on the ass. So what he is doing is indicating that he knows this is all a lie. This is all a fantasy with this little I rhyme. Okay, make sense? Everybody follow? Everybody get it? Okay, great. Then back to the Shakespeare poem. Now, it would probably help us to interpret this if we knew a little bit more about the sonnet as a specific form as well. So the stuff we've been talking about, the rhyme and meter stuff, is stuff that's sort of general, at least to just about all English language poetry written prior to the 20th century. Poets used to think in these terms and really used to consider using iambs or trochees or anapes or dactyls, that sort of thing. Modern poetry, contemporary poetry doesn't really worry as much about this. But what do you know about sonnets, if anything? How many of you have read a sonnet before, or recognize? Okay, so those of you who've read a sonnet before, who know something about them, what are they usually about? What do they usually look like?
Long poems with a certain rhyme scheme.
Yeah, there are set rhyme schemes for a sonnet, right? You can recognize a sonnet partly by the rhyme scheme. Yeah, Kevin.
14 lines.
Pardon?
14 lines.
Always, invariably 14 lines, right? Yes, that's one of the most important things. They have to be 14 lines long, or it's not a sonnet.
Is that a reason?
Pardon? Okay, what else? What else? So 14 lines, and yeah, there is that regular rhyme scheme you talk about, right? Does the rhyme scheme remain the same through the whole poem?
I think it can change as you go throughout the poem.
It has to change at a certain point,
As
right?
you change subjects.
Yeah. There are, pardon?
It has like a turn, I guess.
Yeah, a volta or a turn in the middle, right? So there are two ways this gets done. Right? The traditional Italian sonnet looks like this. 8 lines, rhymed A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. And then 6 lines, rhymed C, D, E, or some variant thereof. So the first 8 lines that all rhyme with each other are called an octet. And the last 6 lines with the varied rhyme scheme are called a sestet. And in the middle here is what is called an Italian a volta, or in English a turn. We use the Italian because this is originally an Italian poetic form. Originates in Italy in the 14th century, I think, end of the Middle Ages, roughly. Yeah, the approach or the subject is different in the sestet than it is in the octet. Right? Something changes between the octet and the sestet. Right? So it's after the volta, after the turn, that this takes place. Now, the English sonnet tends to be a little bit different. It doesn't quite look the same as the Italian sonnet. It's imported into England in the 16th century by diplomats working for Henry VIII, who have been talking with their Italian counterparts, and they learn this poetic form and say, oh, hey, let's try this in English. The problem is, as we've discussed when we talked about Anglo-Saxon poetry, how easy is it to find rhymes in English? It's not easy to rhyme in English, right? So these octets are a lot harder to sustain if you're writing in English than if you're writing in Italian, where everything rhymes. So what they do is come up with a slightly more flexible rhyme scheme. A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, G, G. So we have 3 quatrains, 3 units of 4 lines, and a couplet. Right, a unit of 2 lines. What does this allow for that the Italian form doesn't? Apart from the fact you can find more rhymes. Yeah, I'm sorry?
Some more variation throughout.
Yeah, certainly more variation throughout.
More changes of ideas in the poem.
There's still typically only going to be one turn, but yeah, you're on to the idea that there are certainly more places where you can put it. Right, because the rhyme scheme shifts 1, 2, 3, 4 times, right, there are 1, 2, 3 different places you can actually put a turn in the poem. You're still usually going to find it in an English sonnet right before the couplet, but not always. Right, so yes, the English sonnet is much more flexible. Now, what we're looking at here, the Shakespeare poem, is this an English or an Italian sonnet? I mean, apart from the fact that it's written in English, just quickly go through the rhyme scheme. What are we looking at here? All right, get right. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Although the G, G rhyme here actually goes back up to the B rhyme, right? So we bring the B rhyme back in the couplet. So it's a little bit trickier than is usual for an English sonnet. So let's go through this and look and see where we can find a turn, where there's a shift in approach or imagery or purpose, right? Can I get a volunteer to start reading the poem? All right. Was that a hand up or oh? Anybody? All right, Kyle, go for it.
Let me not to the marriage of true minds and men impediments. Love is not love, which alters when alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. Oh no, it is a never fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips, bland cheeks, within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
All right, thank you very much. So let's go through each of the quatrains here now and figure out, like, what's the imagery that he's employing here, right? So let me not to the marriage of true minds amid impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with a remover to remove. So what does love not do? What does it never do? It doesn't bend, right? So it's an inflexible thing. It's a rigid thing. Love does not bend. Right? It's solid. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. So it is the star to every wandering bark. What does that mean? What's he comparing love to? Yeah, to the North Star, to Polaris. Its position is always the same in the sky, and it was used by ship's navigators to figure out where they were, right? Okay, if we knew where we were in relation to the North Star, right, back before we had shipboard GPS and all that other crap, right, then, you know, we could locate ourselves, right? We're not lost.
It's funny how, like, inaccurate it was at times. To the
Oh,
point
sure.
where I don't even, but, you know, they still had other methods.
Yeah. But yeah, at least, like, if you knew where Polaris was in the sky, you knew which way north was,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, you know, maybe, you couldn't find your way back from Greenland, I don't know, but you at least knew which way north was, right? the point is, right, the North Star is a fixed point, or it's a point that doesn't move. It's a fixed point in the sky. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips land cheeks, within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom.
Kind of say steadfast again,
How so? What's the image that's being used to convey that here? Is the primary point of comparison here love? What's the metaphor in this quatrain about? What's it concerned with?
It's not love.
What profession would use a sickle?
Yeah. Okay. So who's got the sickle? Love or someone or something else?
Something else.
Something else. Yes. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips land cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Who's got the sickle? Yeah, exactly. So time is being here envisioned as what? Who uses what sort of person or thing uses a sickle?
I know what they used back in the old times, whenever they had to get crops and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It looks something like this, right?
That's the thing with the big sharp thing coming off the end.
Yeah, like a big sharp curved blade. Yeah, and you used it for cutting grain. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, what do you do with a sickle? What's that process called? Cutting grain? Harvesting, reaping, right? So when time comes out a reaping, right?
It's not fair, he's a farmer.
Or at least a gatherer, right? Yeah, he didn't necessarily plant it, but he's gathering it in. So even when time comes gathering all the grain, right? Love is not altered, right? When you age and start to decay, love is not altered. And then we get to the final couplet here. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved.
Confident in that statement.
How confident do you think he really is?
I mean, he like it's probably going with the whole thing of the poem. He says like he's trying to portray confidence, but it might not be as far as the whole scheme of the poem.
Mm-hmm. Think about the end rhyme here. Proved and loved. It's an I rhyme.
So he's being sarcastic.
He's being sarcastic. He's basically just negating the whole thing.
Shakespeare was a smart ass.
Yes, he was. Most people who wrote sonnets were, right? The form is actually really well suited for that. I mean, think about the end of the poem, right? It's a couplet. If you take off the T, what do you get? So often you use couplets when you want to pair two things very, very closely together, like a married couple. And here, in addition to writing those really clunky lines of the back and forth rhythms when talking about not wanting to impede the marriage of true minds, and giving us a couplet at the end with an I rhyme, basically what he's doing is undermining this idea of love as an ever-fixed mark, right? That does not bend and does not age and does not change, right? So everything that he's saying in the poem is undercut by the poetic devices he's using. Make sense? Yeah, the sonnet is often used for these kinds of, sort of clever, ironic reversals. Now, I want you to take a look at the Elizabeth Barrett Browning poem on page 650, that How Do I Love Thee? And I want you to just have a look at it, go through it. First off, determine whether it's an English or an Italian sonnet. Just go through, look at the rhyme scheme. Which one of these does it match up to? And then just do a literal surface reading, right? What's happening in the poem? What What is she actually saying? What does it mean? So just literal surface meaning after you figured out what kind of sonnet this is.
Classify them as Italian.
Okay, why would you say Italian?
I mean, it's just, because I just don't really see a couplet there at the end going off like just eye test right off the bat.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't end with a couplet.
Right.
So we're dealing with something that's not this English model, right? What is the rhyme scheme here?
Is it like A, B, B, C, A, B, B?
Well, let's see. Ways and grace, days and praise.
ABBA.
Yeah, ABBA. Good. Right, like Swedish pop sensation ABBA. And then CDC, CDC, right? Yeah, so this is much closer to the Italian form. Right, we've got an octet and a sestet. So you know that when the turn comes, it's going to come where? Probably ninth line, right? That's where that's going to show up. Okay, so surface reading in the poem. What's going on? What does she seem to you to be saying in the poem?
She's expressing love for someone.
Okay, yeah. It looks like a pretty simple love poem, right? How simple? In what ways does she claim to love the person to whom she's speaking, to whom she addresses this?
It's got a lot of religious parallels.
Yeah, there's a lot of religious language in here, right? How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for the ends of being an ideal grace. Now, this is actually a good place to look at where she is actually making rhymes as well. What words she's at, what words and concepts she's fitting together. Right, so ways and grace, height, and sight. Now, what do we notice right off the bat in the A rhyme? Why did you think that this was an ABBC rhyme, Cabriana? Does grace actually rhyme exactly with ways? No, it doesn't. So right, we've got here an I rhyme. Now, what is grace when you see it with a capital G like that? What does it mean?
Like the grace of God.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, God's favor dished out to human beings, right? Sort of a state of divine favor. So what that that's out of step here? What does that suggest about what's going on here? How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for the ends of being an ideal grace.
She really wanted to put those religious parallels on there at the sake of the poem, like for the.
Yeah. But there is something at work here, right?
She compared her love to the love of God.
Oh. Okay.
In simplest terms, yeah, that is what she's doing, right? She's comparing her love for this person to the love of God, right? But which is she emphasizing? Which one wins? Yeah.
Okay, when she go further down, it's like every fourth one. Like, it goes to A, B, B.
Yeah.
A again. She got God, she got grace, she got praise. And then she goes faith. And then the line before the last, she got God.
Uh-huh. Now, when she says faith also, right? Faith, and is the D rhyme here. Is that also part of an I rhyme?
She rhymes it with praise.
It sort of rhymes with praise and grace, but what is she actually, like, if we're looking, this is the octet part, the sestet part of the poem, right? So what is she rhyming it with in this part of the poem? Breath and death, yeah. Faith, breath, death. So on the one hand, it's something that doesn't quite fit with the other things. And she's also rhyming it with death. So if we look here at the sestet, right? I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with the love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life, and if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. So, is it just that her love for this person supersedes for her the love of God?
I thought she was just comparing, she's using the love of God as a reference to compare her love for this other person. Okay.
Does this sound like someone, though, who is still a believer?
Yeah.
I think it kind of sounds like she's disenchanted.
Like,
Okay.
Are you saying that she's using like satire? Like she's mocking?
It's not necessarily satire, but go ahead.
She refers to a childhood faith.
Yep.
It's not no more.
Yeah, childhood's faith, lost saints, right? This is, yeah.
Used to have it.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Yes, this is someone who used to believe and now doesn't. And so now what is she doing with her love for this man?
Comparing it
Filling the void.
Yeah, she's plugging up that hole, right? She's plugging up the hole.
Be a good dude.
What's that?
Must be a good dude.
One would hope. If it is the guy she ended up marrying, he was a very, very beardy gentleman. The 19th century was the golden age of eccentric facial hair. Where do we see the turn come in this poem? I mean, we know where it comes, right? We know where it has to come in this particular shape. What is the actual turn? What's the difference between the sestet and the octet here?
She's just, you see in the sestet where she has in fact lost her faith. And then she's not really mentioning that in the octet, she's just using it as descriptive language, but here you kind of see the whole meaning behind the poem in a way.
Yeah, if we look at the octet, right? Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're getting it. Yeah, that it's the octet is a lot of sort of like building up and praise, right? Right, ends with praise, and then when we look at the sestet, then she's talking about loss, right? So the poem is balanced in that way. The octet is primarily about gain; it's about positive things, and the sestet is primarily about loss. Right. This is what I gain with you
Because of what I lost.
because of what I lost, right? Because of what I no longer have. This is what I'm trying to fill up. Okay, so where are we for time? Does anybody know? Because there's no clock in here. It's 3? Okay, so with the remaining 15 minutes, now that you know a little bit more about how a sonnet is supposed to be structured, right? Take the rest of the time and work on your sonnet. If you need the directions posted up on the board again, I will do that. You are free to ask questions of me or of Megan. And just email these to me by midnight tonight. Yes. Okay. You have it? Okay, well, we're just working on them silently right now. But do you want me to come and help you? Okay, okay. Sorry, I thought you were offering to read it. Yeah, I'll be there in just a second. Okay, so yeah, the directions, should you need them for reference, are up here. Okay. Okay, I think, a breath, okay, so one thing these lines are too long. Right? They're either too long or too short. So how many syllables does every line in the song need to be? 10 syllables, right? And yeah, try to pick a consistent rhythm too, right? So try to go with an IM, like try to go with IMs or trophies or not. Okay, yeah, so the big thing you need to get here is to figure out the rhythm.